a look at Xi's nationalistic views of making America great again. He talked about you here. Okay, stop sending me dumb shit. Okay, Top Xi is going to make China great again. I got to pee. I'll be back in a second.
Communist leaders and political elite are gathering for day 2 of the 20th Party Congress. Xi Jinping opening the event on Sunday like he has in the past, laying out his nationalistic vision for the country's future. But this year is like any other because after 10 years in power, Xi is poised to be selected for an unprecedented 3rd term as party leader. It is a watershed moment for modern China and, as Selena Wang reports now, one that was years in the making.
From a nation of farming villages to sprawling metropolises, in recent history, no country modernized as rapidly as China. And in just 1 decade, no person has changed China more than its supreme leader, Xi Jinping. His image inescapable, his thinking indoctrinated in school children. His key message, make China great again. But above all else, obey and follow his lead. When he took control of the Chinese Communist Party in 2012, there was hope that the relatively low-key leader would make China's economy and society more liberal. But Xi had a different vision, restore the country to its former glory, with his Communist Party firmly at its center.
Xi Jinping sits on top of the party sits on top of China, and China sits on top of the world. That's basically the program.
Xi's China is investing heavily in new technologies, infrastructure, rapidly modernizing the countryside, and the military. He's reasserted party control over business and society.
Okay, let's be real. When China says we're going to make China great, they actually do that though, okay? Like, look at it. Look at the, we're going to make China great again. How much did he talk about trans people? I don't understand, because when someone says we're going to make America great again, I immediately think no spending on infrastructure, none of that, okay? We got to shit on trans people. That's right. There's a 14-year-old girl in Iowa that tried to go to the swim meet. Can you believe it, folks? Iowa! Like, what the fuck? Wait, what do you mean? We got to build a big, beautiful wall. The Great Wall of China just got 10 feet higher. I don't get it. The only trans he focuses on is portation. Yeah, transportation.
Most sophisticated surveillance state, quashing people's freedom.
Bro, he banned effeminate men in media, and you think he's a champion of LGBT rights? First and foremost, I've literally never said that Xi Jinping is a fucking champion of LGBT rights, okay? I do not think that. I'm just simply mentioning that when America says we're going to make America great again, that is often associated with like trying to dunk on trying to dunk on like trans people or just like making ridiculous fucking statements that are completely irrelevant to like, I don't know, beefing up American infrastructure as a matter of fact. So considering this to be like a nationalistic vision when it's accompanied by like social services and whatnot and social safety nets that you are, you're baking into some of the most underserved places. Like you're straight up talking about a country like the United States of America, the wealthiest nation on earth, that is rapidly shutting down hospitals in urban areas. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping is talking about urbanizing all of the rural areas of China, which is a gigantic fucking swath of land to begin with. That's crazy to me. They're like, it's so bad. This nationalistic vision is terrifying. Meanwhile, you're associating with making trains.
During the pandemic with brutal lockdowns. Xi Jinping crushed dreams of democracy in Hong Kong, oversaw the internment.
LGBT, yeah, that's right. He put the G in LGBT. Anyway,
up to 2 million Uyghurs and other minorities in Xinjiang in what Beijing claims are vocational training centers. He's amping up intimidation of Taiwan, vowing to reunite the democratic island with the mainland. China tells its people these actions are long overdue, fueled by the narrative that after 100 years of subjugation by foreign powers in the 19th and 20th centuries, China is finally assuming its rightful place in the world. Anyone who disagrees is blamed for trying to undermine China's rise and quickly censored or even jailed.
That's crazy. You know, I can't believe they're doing that. Police brutality exclusive to the Chinese government. It's not right when they do it either, by the way. I'm not saying it's right, but it is pretty funny when you think about it. They're like, what? The police are brutalizing and jailing protesters? Oh my God. That's crazy, bro.
He is going back to his mythical vision of Chinese history when China was the greatest civilization and the rest of the world just followed the leadership of China.
That framing has ripple effects around the world. China no longer believes it needs to play by American-led international rules. When the U.S. tries to take China on in trade, technology, or human rights,
So that simply reinforces the sense of China under siege from Western powers. I think it has a visceral, emotional appeal in China.
the country is building its own multilateral institutions that are friendlier to autocrats. China grows ever closer.
What? Bro. Pretty much this video you can cut about America except for like the good shit. You know what I mean? Like trains, transportation, and genuinely modernizing farmland. That's it. Like it's America, but with like some good parts on top of it. Okay. She said China is setting up shop in countries that are friendly to autocrats. Like what? Were you at French Laundry yesterday? I don't know where the fuck French Laundry is, man. If you think I leave my house instead of playing Valorant and watching anime, you are delusional.
To Russia, unified by a common foe. In Xi Jinping's China dream, the country is glorious and strong, with the Communist Party ruling 1.4 billion people and shaping a new world order. Selena Wang, CNN, Hong Kong.
And I'm joined now by Stephen Jiang, CNN's Beijing bureau chief, and also senior international correspondent Will Ripley, who's standing by in Taipei. First to you, Stephen. 24 hours later, how has Mr. Xi's speech been received? What's your read?
Well, Michael, in this country, the speech can only be received in one way, with resounding support and enthusiasm, as we have seen, at least publicly from state media and social media by...
All the coverage I've seen of this thus far has been like NPR and all other American outlets being like, doesn't seem like Xi Jinping's power is going to be, his power is waning anytime soon as a consequence of the past 10 years of, the Chinese economy prospering. But also on top of that, even some of his most ridiculous actions, such as the COVID shutdowns, are being seen within the party infrastructure as an overall net positive. Like they're just like they're like upset that my man is seen as like a relatively popular figure, at least amongst those who are in close proximity to power, who are in positions of power. China economy is stagnating though lately. Also, a zero COVID shot is really human unfriendly. I don't even disagree. I agree. I think that their COVID shutdown protocols and the uncertainty of how long those protocols will continue is genuinely fearful for a lot of people. It's not great. But also, you could just say that overall, he is still popular. You could say that. And for people who are like bringing up Xinjiang, for example, it's how do I describe it? It's a human rights violation. I understand that. I mention it, right? Having said that, however, if you are looking at the angle of like, does it impact his popularity? Of course not. Do you think Americans give a shit when Haitian people that are coming over the border, for example, are dying? No, they don't. 52 undocumented migrants were dead inside of a fucking 18-wheeler. And that didn't even make the fucking mainstream news for longer than 30 seconds. You think that changes the popularity of a leader? No, of course not. They don't see the Uyghurs as anything but separatists, okay? It's just, for the most part, they don't even think about it. It's not even a consideration. If you're going to talk about people like Jack Ma or whatever, if you're going to talk about like billionaires and the way that the Chinese government controls billionaires, then that is a popular provision. That is not something that people are upset about. There is no like Chinese understanding beyond Chinese prosperity. There is no Chinese understanding of like, oh, one day I'm going to make it. I'm going to be a fucking billionaire just like Jack Ma. That's an American attitude that you are placing upon Chinese citizens. I don't think they give a shit. I think the understanding overall is, look, as long as I keep my head down and don't talk about shit that I'm not supposed to be talking about, I know that the government is taking care of me, okay? That's the way, as far as I understand it, with my both Western-centric opinion and also some with my proximity to Chinese culture in China, in mainland China. This is the way that it has been described to me, is that you just have this understanding that like the government is going to control a lot of aspects of your life, but ultimately if you fucking keep your head down, you know that they got your back. No shot. That's incredibly authoritarian, just like the ad break at the top of the hour. Okay, well, some of you think that it's incredibly...
I would rather a streamer runs like 1 minute of advertisements every half hour. I would rather a streamer runs like 1...
Well, I mean, I run it once an hour at the top of the hour, which is slated to increase, of course, not to the same level that you have seen elsewhere. However, it is still slated to increase, but fear not. As long as you subscribe, you can avoid those ads. You can have an ad-free broadcasting experience for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. As long as you have an Amazon Prime account connected to your Twitch account, you get one free Prime subscription a month. Here's your ad break now. The ad thing is so funny because it's like, it quite literally showed that I was right all along. It was another thing that like everyone fucking unjustifiably shit on me for a year, and then... And once again, as long as you kept your head down and you understood that I had your best interest, it turns out I was right, okay? Always. Anyway. Wait, what was I going to talk about? Fuck. That segue took me out a little bit.
Everyone, students in school, priests, Buddhist monks, and even grooms and brides at weddings. But of course, as we were talking about this yesterday, this opaque system means reading the speech is also like reading tea leaves. We talked about how him pausing a few times during a speech to clear his throat and sipping water got noticed, drawing attention on the issue of his stamina, because that's important in the system of one-man rule, as it's requiring him to make a growing number of decisions, big and small, on both domestic and international fronts. But of course, people have also been diving deep into that 2-hour speech and noticing one of the words he has used the most often was struggle or fight. He talked about fighting COVID, fighting corruption, fighting separatists, and without naming the U.S., fighting unilateralism and hegemony. This is, of course, an indication that he's unlikely to back down from any of his hardline positions and policies, including on zero COVID. And another phrase he used got people's attention was how he said China is now entering a phase of strategic opportunities and risks with growing uncertainty. Because in the past, both he and his predecessors has always said China is entering a phase of strategic opportunities. So the new phrasing would undoubtedly generate a lot of discussions and debate. Is he implying that in terms of assessing the external threat environment, China is actually going to moving resources, reallocating resources more towards a long-term war footing as China anticipates a risk or growing risk of conflict or even war? Michael?
Yeah, good to have your analysis, Stephen. Thanks for that. Will Ripley, as we've discussed, Mr. Xi made clear in his speech his view of Taiwan's future, and independence is not in it. What has been the reception to the speech there?
Well, China keeps saying, Michael, and Xi Jinping said it yesterday, that peaceful reunification with the island that they've never controlled since the end of China's civil war. This self-governing democracy has been running its own show for more than 70 years. They've evolved into this democratic system, and their people, more than 23 million of them, elected the leaders that Beijing calls illegitimate. And Beijing's communist rulers, while they lay claim to this island, you would be hard-pressed to find anybody here who believes that the rulers in Beijing have rule over their lives. Now, does it mean that people want, a war with China? No. A lot of people, the majority of people here, continue to want to maintain this status quo where Taiwan basically looks and acts like a country without calling itself that, or at least without most of the world calling them that, because of, Beijing making sure that the only...
Yeah, what about America? Does America call it that? No.
Officially recognized China is Beijing, and yet they continue to have their own military, their own democracy, and they continue with life as is. But that might be difficult. But it's hard to imagine, Michael, when people hear, they've just reopened the borders, they're going to have a major, LGBTQ pride coming up in a matter of weeks, something that would basically be unthinkable in China, both open borders and the pride thing, because, we've seen what happens to ethnic and sexual minorities and feminists in the mainland. They're basically absorbed and silenced, whereas here, those differences are celebrated, and there's...
I'm sorry, it's so cynical. I will never in a million fucking years look at this and go, that's actually such a legitimate point. It's being adopted in the most cynical way. It is just a cynical way to weaponize social justice causes, to just say, like, yeah, we got to do something about this. America and the American media has never given a single shred of a fuck about these kinds of civil justice movements, both internally, domestically, and certainly not overseas, okay? It's just not a thing. You don't give a fuck about it when it comes to our allies, our partners, our trade partners, our partners that we give weapons to. You don't give a fuck about it happening here, and then you just only care about it when you can weaponize it. It is so indecent. It's so fucking indecent. You're wrong. They do care. That's why they enforce it. What do you mean? It's just ridiculous. Anyway, are leftists celebrated in Taiwan? No. No. Taiwan as a country was built around anti-communist sentiment. It was built by Western powers in an identical capacity to every other country. Taiwan is in a unique predicament, and it's not as like black and white or clear cut. Obviously, people don't want to fucking join China, understandably, because Chinese civil liberties are. Mainland China and Chinese civil liberties are obviously not great, okay? They're not. They're awful. It went through a hella fascist phase for its first 30 or so years. The Republic of China and Taiwan is the equivalent of Miami Cubans for the Cultural Revolution. Why is it awful in China? Civil liberties are awful in China. Governments in the East and West have different methods of control. Okay, it's not an East-West It's not an East and West difference, but I'm just going to use it right now because it's the easiest way to fucking comprehend it. Okay? You have an authoritarian mechanism of control with the way that information flows, or you have the neoliberal mechanism of control with the way that information flows. Now, Chomsky and Zizek don't agree on much, but this is one area where they are in agreement, okay? Which is that the neoliberal method of control is by creating a comfortable window of acceptable thoughts, acceptable opinions that make it seem like there's a diversity of choice when there really isn't, okay? Versus the authoritarian mechanism of control. The authoritarian version of that is basically that everybody knows that the state is just ripping out propaganda non-fucking stop, and you know what the boundaries are, and they're well established, okay? That's how that works. In China, it's authoritarian. You can't watch porn. There's plenty of websites you can't access. There are some benefits to that, obviously. Not as much fucking misinformation and brain rot that goes through, unless it's misinformation directly created by the state, right? Which has a way to shape public consciousness in the way that the government wants public consciousness to be. In the United States of America and in Western neoliberal capitalist countries, there is this semblance of freedom within the way that information flows. But with that, you have, psychotic, ridiculous misinformation running rampant. People thinking that, trans students are fucking, trans students are pissing and shitting in fucking kitty litter boxes. But how is a country supposed to maintain control when Western actors work diligently to undermine it? I don't think that is the only reason why China has such a strong grip of power on information and its economy, okay? Come the fuck on. I mean, I get that argument for Cuba, which is shown time and time again that it cares about civil liberties with respect to actual marginalized communities, but does not offer that same kind of civil liberty to information spreading. And they do that because it's a wartime country, no matter which way we cut it. But I don't recognize that for China. China is a very powerful country, and they choose to do this regardless. It is just their preferred method. Western involvement in China spans decades. I think that it goes beyond the same argument that you could cut for Cuba.
There's some more color in the streets here. There's also less order. And of course, Xi Jinping has made order his priority. But you look at the polls, Michael, and not too many people here would willingly just reabsorb with the China that they're seeing right now, certainly with the rolling lockdowns.
I grew up in China, and your everyone keeps their head down phrase was very accurate. I mean, look, the Chinese prosperity thing, you could say that Chinese prosperity is overall propaganda, right? You could say it's state-sponsored propaganda. You do realize workers in China have literally no rights, right? Yes, I do realize it. But it goes along with what I just said. Keep your head down. You go to work. You do the fucking brutal work that you need to do. And you ultimately are living with the recognition that, as a collective, as a whole, as a unit, the government has your best interest in mind, and slowly but surely, they will modernize the country. Also, we don't have any fucking rights here either. We just have certain liberties, okay? We have liberties of consumption. And that, I think, is a way more adequate mechanism of control. I like that. I like feeling like I have the freedom to choose between 30 different kinds of snacks, okay? I think that has a dulling effect. It has a sedating effect on the masses, but I do think that is a better way to control the population rather than directly telling them what they can and can't say and actively pushing for consequences. Country best interest in mind is not a very good wording, even though I know what you mean. Well, Chinese prosperity only works if the government actually does take steps. to follow through. Can't say no to my boss, but I can get a new flavor of Oreo every month. Yes. But a lot of people prefer that. I prefer that. We don't have any rights. Okay, dude, you wouldn't exist in China as a not government aligned commentator. No, the only reason why I can exist in America as a non-government aligned commentator is quite literally what I'm stating, because I'm fucking powerless, okay? That's the point, which is why I'm saying I prefer the American method. I prefer the Western neoliberal method of control. If control is a necessity for any form of governance, then I would prefer the free one, which is why I'm here. I like it. That's a big reason why I live here. Anyway. I mean, a lot of people in China got out of poverty because of it, which is why they don't mind it. Yes, exactly. That's the point. Would you do what you do in Turkey if you were to speak out against Erdogan on Twitch? No, I would not want to. No, because Turkey quite literally jails any kind of opposition. They have like they have no free speech, and they have ridiculous defamation laws. So.
And the military intimidation, frankly, doesn't really faze people here because they've been dealing with it their whole lives. So even as China has stepped up intimidation, people are aware that someday there might be a conflict, and they just say they'll be ready to defend their way of life.
Yeah, deal with it when it comes. Will, thanks for that. Will Ripley there in Taipei, Stephen Jiang in Beijing for us. Appreciate it. Thank you both.
My first question.
Bro, Chinese workers have infinitely less right than American workers. Why do you think American capitals export their labor there? Holy shit. What are you talking about? I've never said that Chinese workers have better rights. Why is it that anytime we talk about this kind of conversation, anytime we have this kind of conversation, you immediately rush to this like fucking ridiculous thing that I never said? Okay? I never said that. I never said that like things are great in China. Okay? The only thing I will say is things are great in China in comparison to how things were in China, okay? All else considered, if you look at Chinese material conditions 30 years ago across the board, whether it be workers' rights or Chinese material conditions now in comparison to 30, 40, 50 years ago, there is a dramatic improvement that is so obvious that it's got Americans feeling fucking scared. Okay? That's it. And it has continued to improve in a dramatic way. Okay? That is part of the fucking reason why Americans and the American government just despises Chinese prosperity in general and sees it as an understandable competing superpower. Vast remote areas in China are still very poor. Yes, absolutely. And not only is it still very fucking poor, that is one element that at least Xi Jinping is claiming he seeks to change. Except, you're talking about the entire country that was vastly poor. And there are still poor areas.